There are many differences between men and women. There are many differences between all sexes. But there are some time-old tales that men have always bragged about that maybe they shouldn't be bragging about. Maybe it's all false. And maybe, you know what? Maybe sometimes our male ego is just a little too big and maybe we need to be taken down and rung. Or maybe not. Hey Bumblebees, Dewey Stewart back with a super interesting video today. Today we are looking at the top 10 facts about the male body that sound made up, but aren't. So for any of you viewers out there who identify as male, or any others who just want to know what the hell is going on with us blokes, keep watching and be prepared to go back to grade 9 health class. Ready? Good. Now let's get to it and open your textbooks. Starting us off at number 10, we have men producing milk.
I have nipples, Greg. Could you milk me?
Yeah, that's right. Women aren't the only ones who can produce milk. Nipples develop early on in the womb before the embryo becomes distinctly male or female. So it turns out that men also have mammary glands, aka the organ that is responsible for producing milk. Now, even though men can produce milk, that doesn't mean it's a good thing. It's usually a sign of something wrong. Most commonly, it happens when there is an interference with prolactin, the hormone needed to produce milk. So while we can do this, it sounds like we don't want this to happen. So be sure to see a trusted doctor in case this does happen. Look after your body, folks. You only get one. Coming in at our number 9 spot, we have men usually have darker hair than women. That's right. If you ever made the assumption that men always have darker hair, more than women, well, you're kind of right, but of course there are always a few exceptions. Think of the amount of blonde males you know compared to the amount of blonde females you know. You probably know a few more blonde females. Now, according to Joseph Hart, RN, Doctor of Operations at Maxim Hair Restoration, he says men typically have darker hair than their female counterparts, particularly once the individual has passed through puberty, and his trend will continue with age. He also says that this phenomenon is due to men's higher levels of melanin, which can influence people's skin color, hair color, and even eye color. Now this one actually makes sense to me because my little brother growing up was always a blondie, but in and around his teenage years, his hair slowly got darker, and you know what? He became less cute. Love you, bro. Coming in at number 8, we have men actually stay warmer than women. If you have ever seen a group of guys out in the middle of the cold or a crazy cold snowy winter and seen them wearing shorts, this guy? Well, guess what? Leave them alone. They're fine, because men can actually stay warmer than women. Most often. Of course there are exceptions, just like everything on this list, but men hold more muscle than women typically, and that makes them hold more heat. So they have a lower resting body temperature. Now, doctors of osteopathic medicine have recorded this. This makes sense to me because whenever I have cuddled with a female partner or been with friends, they are always freezing and I am always burning up. Don't get me wrong, I am a cuddler, guys, but damn, sometimes this guy needs some air. Coming in at number 7, we have men can slow down the aging process. How do you ask? Because we're freaking superheroes, broskies. Okay, not really. I don't want it to seem like my male ego is that big, because it's not. But from the neck up, men typically tend to age not as quickly as women do. Now, why is this? It's because men lose collagen density more slowly than women, which basically means that their skin resists wrinkles and sagging a bit more as they age older. Dermatologists, however, claim that men and women both lose about 1% of collagen per year after the age of 20. But women's process can speed up after they hit menopause. I will say, even though this is what the studies show, it doesn't mean that men don't find ways to mess it up. Because men are usually more lax with their skincare, not all, but a fair few, this messes with their natural skin advantage. So if you're a guy out there who isn't using sunscreen, do it, and if you want to start taking care of your skin, it's never too late. And if you already are, then up top, buddy. Coming in at number 6, we have men have a more stable base. Now what the hell does that mean? Well, let me tell you, women tend to be smaller than men, but of course, once again, there's always exceptions, so you just don't freak out at me. But even when men and women are generally the same height, men usually have the larger and wider feet. Although women typically usually have the higher arch, a shallower first toe, shorter ankle length, a smaller instep, but a larger calf. Not for this guy though, my calves are the only part of my body that I am extremely content with. Want to see me in heels? Well then you better play your cards right. Anyway, in short, men usually have longer and wider feet, but in case you were wondering, the old saying that men with huge feet usually have large, you know what? Sorry guys, that isn't true. That's just a lie that a bunch of big footy guys made up in the day. Probably more for themselves. Coming in at our halfway point at number 5, we have men aren't always surging with testosterone. Early in life, men will get 2 surges of testosterone. One tells their genitals to form into the male genitalia, and the other is believed to implant their male pattern on their brains. From the early years, little boys and girls have relatively the same amount of testosterone in their bodies. It isn't until puberty that the males have a surge in the hormone. The average amount of testosterone in men ages 40 and younger, which is a huge range, are 350 to 1000 nanograms a deciliter, which if you were to put all of that in a shot glass, it would barely fog the bottom of the glass. So there you go. As much as we think it's just flowing through us all the freaking time, It's not. So there you go. Yes, men have testosterone, but we're not running on it like Jolt Cola or anything. And if you know what Jolt Cola is, power to you. It's just there, and of course the hormone can fluctuate depending on physical and mental health. So once again, guys, take care of yourselves, both physically and mentally. Coming in at number 4, we have men have thicker skins. Yeah, so if you make fun of us or even yell bad things at us, that means we don't hurt as much as women do. Yeah, right. As long as you have a beating heart and ears, words can hurt anyone. And don't forget that. But physically, men actually do have thicker skin than women. Due to the testosterone that flows through our system, even though it's not much all the time, in our older years, which is more than women naturally have, this makes our skin just a bit thicker. Androgen testosterone stimulation causes an increase in skin thickness, which is why men's skin is typically 25% thicker than women's. And most often the texture is also tougher too. Probably, once again, because we don't look after our skin as much as we should. Boys, come on, what are we doing? Starting us off in our top 3, at number 3, we have men who can also get yeast infections. The itchy, embarrassing, and annoying infections don't just happen to our female friends, but guys, we can get them too. And guess what? It's in the same nether regions and are actually common in men who are uncircumcised, heavier, or prone to excessive sweating. Usually it shows up in a rash and can sometimes have an orderly discharge as well. So one more thing, this is for everyone watching. Personal hygiene is not just to be clean, it is for your health as well. So please, like I said earlier, you only get one body. Take care of it. Coming in at number 2 is one that we may not want to admit here, guys, but I'm sorry, it's just freaking true. Men snore more than women. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine reported that 40% of all men are habitual snorers. Typically, men tend to store more body fat in the abdomen area if they are going to have an excess amount of body fat, and this can lead to more loud snoring as they breathe out of their mouths and noses, where 24% of all women were reported to be habitual snorers. So the statistics, they show that we are the bigger snorers. In the end, this one doesn't mean much to me because my family used to rent a small cottage up on Lake Huron, and let me tell you, that entire structure would shake from the sound of both my mother and father sawing logs in their bedroom all freaking night. Yeah, and it kept me up all night too. When have I ever kept them up like that? Answer, never, because even as a baby, I was a freaking saint. So what the hell, guys? And finally, at number 1, we have men do actually have larger Adam's apples. Both men and women have Adam's apples. Now, what are they though? Well, these interior bulges are usually made up of thyroid cartilage. The only purpose of these is to protect those lovely vocal cords of ours, and whether you sing or not. This cartilage is also responsible for the higher pitch in people's voices, but during the teenage years, the angle this cartilage sits at changes, forming an Adam's apple, and thus dropping or breaking a person's voice. But the angle is usually smaller in men, which is what gives us usually a larger bulge in the neck as well as a lower voice. There you have it. That has been the top 10 facts about the male body that sound made up but aren't. Viewers of all sexes, what did you think? Were some of these a bit surprising to you, or were these pretty much on par with what you expected? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our hive down below. And until next time, I've been your host, Dewey Stewart, and I will see you all back here very soon. See ya, B.